If you love us and you love what we're doing and you want to support us, here are some ways you can do that. Support the sponsors. We have good sponsors, right? So like I wouldn't tell you to get something that wasn't good. So if it's something you're going to get anyway, just use the code, whatever code we say. That helps us so much that you can't even imagine. You can also, share it with a friend, a family member, a stranger. Mm-hmm. I mean, make it your job. You can also subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and now YouTube.
Yes. Oh my goodness, a whole other world there.
It's a whole other world.
And I'm not a big YouTube person. Like I know you are obviously in what you do. YouTube. So for me, I'm like,
no, it's not what I do. That's like my escape.
Right. But you explore it, you know it, you know the ins and outs is kind of what I meant.
Oh yeah.
The ins and outs. But for me, it's like a whole new world.
It's amazing.
What is this
Wait
place?
till the algorithm starts to get to know you. It's one of the best out there. It's just I'm constantly being fed stuff that I want to watch, and I'm like, I can't watch it all. My save to watch later playlist is like.
Oh, you can do that?
Yeah.
I should do that.
It's like putting it in a now and never pile, though.
Yeah, but I have like 1,000 tabs open because I'm like, I want to see that, but not right now. So I open up a new tab.
Exactly.
Okay.
You know what I started doing? Going through my internet tabs on Safari on my phone to see like what kind of a day I had because I don't remember anything ever. I'm like, why would I want to know that?
Why not?
What was going on there?
You're a glutton for knowledge.
I'm a glutton for knowledge. Rate on Spotify, review on Apple, and engage on YouTube in any way. Like you can like the video, subscribe. You can a heart emoji as a comment is more than enough. Just to let us know you're there also, because there have been some listeners heading over there, and that I love that. They're like, I was listening to it, but I wanted to see Tank's reaction or Slater's face when this happened.
Exactly. And you can bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
If you want to see a certain part on YouTube, go over, then head back to audio or week to week, whatever.
Whatever floats your boat.
Whatever. I really want to get into part 2.
Okay. So without further over in Killarney, let's get into this week's case.
Positively beautiful. I can't wait to hear the whole thing, you freak.
I can't. It's too ra-loo or some shit like that. I can't.
No, it was beautiful.
I'm not going to be able to do it.
Okay, so I'm going to summarize part 1.
Yes, please.
All right, just briefly, but this is what I always say when we get to part 2 of a case.
You just went...
I've gotten good, right?
Pretty good, yeah.
This little summary is in no way a substitution for listening to the entire episode of part 1.
And if you haven't listened to part 1 and you're listening to part 2, believe me when I tell you, so far, for me, I haven't listened to the final episode, it's the best case I've ever sat through.
I actually wasn't able to sleep after we finished recording this because I was so hyped up that you said it was your favorite episode. We've done over 60 episodes, so that's not a small comment to make.
That's what Michael Singer is talking about. Oh. Letting go of the blockages, letting that limitless energy flow through you.
Yeah, limitless.
It's in there all the time, like in Spaceballs when he pulls out the Schwartz ring or he's trying to do the Schwartz and he doesn't have it, and Yogurt goes, "I got that ring in a Cracker Jack box."
May the Schwartz be with you.
Schwartz was in you all along. Yes.
Amazing. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to summarize part 1 just for a little courtesy, but please go listen to part 1 if you haven't. In part 1, we concluded with the forensic identification of 39-year-old Farah Noor's remains in the Royal Canal in Dublin. And as we detailed earlier in part 1, Farah was brutally murdered by Linda Mulhall when she was 31 and her sister Charlotte, 22. Mulhall, infamously known thereafter as the Scissor Sisters.
Scissors.
Farah, who had been dating Linda and Charlotte's mother, Kathleen, was a violent, abusive man and a sexual predator.
Yep.
While celebrating Charlotte's 22nd birthday on March 20th, 2005, Farah, who was fueled by 3 days' worth of alcohol and an ecstasy pill that was snuck into his drink by Kathleen, made inappropriate sexual advances toward Linda in front of Charlotte and Kathleen.
And we can't emphasize enough, he was on a bender for 3 days.
Correct.
At that point, sleep deprivation is having more of an effect on his psychotic state than any of the drugs.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Yeah.
When confronted by the women, Farah reacted violently and grabbed Kathleen by her arm while threatening her life. And obviously the women confronted him because they were telling him to stop making sexual advances to Linda.
And Kathleen is the mom and the girlfriend.
Right.
Okay.
Driven by fear and allegedly at Kathleen's urging, Charlotte and Linda retaliated against Farah with lethal force.
That's right, she asked them.
Charlotte slit his throat with a box cutter and stabbed him over 20 times, while Linda bludgeoned him with a hammer at least a dozen times.
Shoot, I meant to look up what a Stanley blade is.
It's a box cutter.
I know, but stabbing someone with a box cutter doesn't compute in my brain, but please go on.
It's a very sharp blade that they penetrated into his flesh.
I'm annoying myself at this point.
Okay. Following the murder, the Scissor Sisters dismembered Farah's corpse, disposed of most of his body parts in the Royal Canal, buried his head separately in a park, meticulously cleaned the crime scene, and then drained his bank account 3 days later. Initially, the Gardaí, which is the law enforcement of the Republic of Ireland, were stumped about the victim's identity, but a breakthrough came when they circulated a photo of Farah's distinctive shirt, which they found with his remains.
His away jersey.
Exactly right. Following a Crime Stoppers appeal, one of Farah's friends and neighbors stepped forward to identify the man found in the canal, which was then confirmed with DNA analysis as being Farah Noor. Mm-hmm. All right. So that's the summary of part one. So everything I'm about to say is now officially part two.
Imagine I died and they found one of those blue-gray shirts that I wear.
It'd be so
Everyone
obviously
would be like,
you.
oh, yeah, that's him for sure.
Yeah. Yep. And me, what would it be? Some kind of faux fur, animal ear situation.
Pink spiky backpack.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. So in addition to Farah's friend and neighbor, Muhammad Ali Abu Bakr, coming forward to identify his remains, two other people came out of the woodwork with useful information about the suspects responsible for the death of the man in the canal.
Mike Tyson and...
Holyfield? No. And remarkably, these two other people were James and John Mulhall Jr., the two eldest Mulhall brothers, who were both incarcerated at the time in Wheatfield Prison, Clondalkin. So Linda and Charlotte, their brothers who were incarcerated, narked on them.
How did they know?
It was being advertised everywhere. Crime Stoppers, whatever. They got wind of it inside.
Oh, they got wind inside that Farah was murdered.
That Farah was murdered, and law enforcement were trying to identify his remains.
Gotcha.
So we know that Farah's friend Muhammad had come forward, and I'm saying in addition to Muhammad, the brothers came forward. So let me tell you about that. So James was serving a sentence for dangerous driving causing death, while John Jr. was in custody related to being a passenger in a stolen vehicle. They happened to be incarcerated together. So between April and July of 2005, 3 months after Farah's murder, Kathleen, Linda, and Charlotte visited James and John Jr. several times in prison and yapped about the murder and dismemberment, completely unaware, obviously, of the consequences this confession would prove to have.
Really?
Because on July 11th at 7:47 p.m., the brothers contacted the Dublin Emergency Exchange to rat their sisters out in an effort to prevent their mother, Kathleen, from potentially going down for their crime, because at this point, all signs were pointing at Kathleen as being sort of the sole person responsible for the death.
That, I mean, as harsh as it sounds, does make sense.
That the brothers ratted the sisters out to protect the mother?
I wouldn't even call it ratting at that point. They're giving information that the cops need so that their mother doesn't go to jail.
They ratted them out.
I know, but ratting it feels like more...
They did it with like bad intentions to throw them under the bus.
Just to get them in trouble.
Right. You know? No, I do believe that they were doing it. I mean, there are some sources that say they did it because they thought they were going to get their hands on the Crime Stoppers, 10,000 euros reward.
Yeah.
That went to Muhammad, but I think that this holds more water.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine Kathleen is going to get off scot-free.
You'll find out, won't you?
I will. We all will.
So the brothers disclosed very specific details, including how Charlotte decapitated Farah to hinder identification and how Linda severed Farah's penis as retribution for raping Kathleen. And this sounds so, convoluted, all these different players. Again, if you listen to part one, this is all going to make sense. If you didn't, it's a little confusing, I feel like.
Yeah.
But of course, these were the two body parts that were precisely the two missing from the recovered remains in the canal. So when law enforcement got this information from the brothers about how the head was chopped off and the penis, it just lended sort of credibility that, Linda and Charlotte, likely the suspects were going for here.
Yeah.
In addition to the crucial phone call made by James and John Jr. that betrayed their sisters, the Gardaí also achieved 4 additional breakthroughs in the case that pointed to the Mulhall women's guilt. All right? Firstly, extensive DNA evidence collected at Kathleen and Farah's apartment conclusively established it as being the murder scene.
Yep.
Notably, this was also the last place that Farah was seen alive with all 3 Mulhall women, as witnessed by Muhammad.
Okay.
Pop quiz.
Okay.
Coming at you early today. How did forensic experts determine with scientific certainty that the apartment was indeed the scene of the actual murder?
How did the Gardaí, or whatever you're saying?
I didn't even say that. I said forensic experts, but yes.
Experts determined that it was the scene of the murder.
Correct.
Okay.
A, they used luminol, which revealed spatters of arterial blood indicative of a violent, fatal struggle.
Okay.
B, they found marks in the bathroom floor tiles that were consistent with the hammer blows used to chip away at Farah's bones during the dismemberment.
Okay.
C, they found eggs belonging to rove beetles, which feed on remnants of decomposing flesh beneath the floorboards.
Oh, my God.
Oh, you look unwell.
I mean, no, I'm just unwell because of this pop quiz. Like, what the fuck is it? Luminol, marks, or bugs? Mm-hmm. Let me unblock. Bugs.
No.
Myself has betrayed myself. Marks.
No.
Luminol seemed too easy.
Well, you should have gone with it. Sometimes the right answer is the easy answer.
Yeah, but what? I mean, how did you come up with those other 2?
Because I'm not well.
That's so true.
I know. I mean, it should be clear by this point.
I forget sometimes.
But listen, I have a fun fact.
Okay.
This was one of the first times luminol was used in Ireland.
Oh, okay.
If not the first time.
And it wasn't that long ago, right, this case?
No, it wasn't long ago at all, but it was the first time that they used luminol.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Okay, so that was one sort of significant breakthrough, right? Was all this DNA found. Now they know that the actual murder happened in that apartment. Second, Farah's cell phone was traced by the Gardaí post-death and found to be in the possession of John Mulhall Sr. Okay?
The cell phone.
Farah's cell phone was found in John's.
Oh, that's right. He was there.
Yes, he helped to
right.
discard of the bags of remains and weapons and stuff.
And I made it through the first podcast without saying this, but I'm not going to do it in this one. I'm just going to get out. Whenever you say Gardaí, I think of Chef Boyardee, and that's all I wanted to say.
Oh, my God.
Okay?
But now I'm picturing you with a Chef Boyardee hat.
I've been picturing you with a chef hat this whole time.
Really? Also, now I see Ratatouille in your hat. I'm going places in my mind.
Let's get back on track.
Okay, third breakthrough. After Sergeant John Brutton and his team from the Garda Water Unit expanded their search in the River Liffey just downstream from where Farah's remains were discovered, they found an additional sports bag. And in this sports bag were gloves, a cigarette lighter from Gala Stores in Ballybough, which is where Kathleen and Farah lived, a bathroom towel, a chain, pillows, blankets, and a knife with a black handle. Furthermore, these items were found up the river embankment behind the home of a man named Harry Burns, who was John's boss. Okay, so
John Mulhall's boss.
yeah, so John was a glass fitter, just so you know.
Okay.
And the remains were found behind his boss's home. So it was theorized that the Mulhalls, likely John, used the river access behind Burns's house to dispose of evidence while Burns had been away on vacation.
That's what I was going to ask. So the river ran through his backyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
More or less.
Okay.
But you needed his property to access the location where this bag was found.
Gotcha.
All right. And finally, the final big breakthrough at this point in the investigation was CCTV footage capturing Linda, Charlotte, and Kathleen purchasing bleach and garbage bags the day after the murder.
So, I mean, whatever. They're not professionals. It is what it is.
They're not professionals.
That and the emptying the bank account is just like... guys,
Rookie mistakes.
what are you doing?
Rookie. So suffice it to say, all of that combined with the revealing new statements from James and John Jr., detectives had amassed sufficient evidence to arrest Linda, Charlotte, Kathleen, and John Mulhall.
Okay.
So on August 3rd, 2005, a coordinated effort by 4 teams of detectives led to the simultaneous arrests of all 4 suspects at 2 Central Garda stations. So they split them up. Each suspect underwent lengthy interrogations, Linda, Charlotte, and Kathleen for 12 hours each, and John for 9. But despite law enforcement's efforts and extensive questioning, all of the suspects were released due to what was deemed at the time as being insufficient evidence to hold them, according to legal assessment.
Okay.
And Linda, feeling inappropriately and prematurely cocky upon her release, even threatened to sue Detective Inspector Christy Mangan for her wrongful arrest.
Wow.
This is like, I feel like what people do, they dig themselves in holes. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you got released, leave it.
Like
Leave it.
OJ writing a book called If I Did It.
Exactly. Perfect.
Rest in hell.
Rest in hell is right. But Linda's bravado ultimately crumbled, and very quickly, because following this release, her mental state rapidly deteriorated.
Linda's.
And she became consumed by a crushing sense of guilt and shame 24/7. The torment became so intense that she found herself unable to face her own children. And in an effort to numb her pain, Linda once again turned to excessive drinking. But it didn't do the trick, because she remained haunted by visceral memories of the crime and was plagued by the lingering smell of Farah's sliced open intestines in her nostrils.
God.
A stark reminder of her deplorable, irreversible, heinous actions.
Yeah.
As the investigation persisted, Linda felt the relentless pressure of Garda scrutiny and feared an inevitable breakthrough in the case that would seal her fate and send her away, which is exactly what would break me. I feel like, aside from the guilt of taking a life, I would just constantly feel like they're going to get me.
Oh, my God.
I'm going to wake up and in front of me will be the FBI and I'm done.
Linda was always kind of on the edge, though, right?
Yes,
she was like teetering anyway.
She was teetering anyway. She definitely had a very sort of precarious mental state for most of her life.
Yeah.
And remember, she was the one who, for whatever it's worth, was like sort of apologizing to Farah as she was slicing him up.
Really?
Yeah, she was crying. She couldn't even participate in the dismemberment initially because she was way too distraught about it.
Yeah.
Again, take it with a grain of salt. She still did it. But this was just to kind of paint a picture where she was emotionally and psychologically.
Yeah.
Her distress, though, wound up leading to a suicide attempt, which resulted in hospitalization. So she was understandably cracking. And it was at this point in Linda's life, precisely 1 year after her initial arrest and subsequent release, on August 17th, 2006 at 5 p.m., she found herself needing to unburden her conscience by confessing everything to law enforcement. And when I say everything, I mean everything.
Yeah.
In a detailed verbal confession that spanned 4 hours and 20 minutes just of her straight talking, she divulged every aspect of the crime to Detective Inspector Christy Mangan and Sergeant William Hickey. She even attempted to guide them to the burial site of Farah's head, although it was ultimately never recovered.
That's such an interesting example of the truth will set you free, because obviously the truth physically will wind her up in jail, but like there's nothing worse than being a prisoner of your own mind and actions.
Absolutely. And per usual, you are 10 steps ahead. Remember this point for when we get to the trial.
Okay.
All right. So naturally, the 3 Mulhall women were rearrested in October. And one poignant detail that emerged, which significantly elevated my respect for the Gardaí, not that I needed to be elevated, because I think they did a tremendous job with this investigation, but one thing that I really liked was their thoughtful consideration during the arrest process. They had a real sensitivity to the potential emotional impact on the family that these arrests would have, and they strategically waited until Linda's children had left for school before proceeding to arrest her. There's something about that. You know, when you find little bits of humanity in these cases, you cling to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so you might be wondering, if you're on your toes, and you typically are, why John Mulhall wasn't rearrested. Just the 3 women.
Yeah.
So the answer involves self-harm, and it warrants a trigger warning, so please listen with caution, okay? In December 2005, John, carrying the weight of immense personal turmoil and guilt of what happened and his involvement in the cover-up, drove his Berlingo van to Phoenix Park, a place steeped in memories from his childhood. There, he found a secluded spot that he knew well, and taking a rope from a washing line, he crossed to the forest opposite the Wellington Monument. After securing a double knot in the rope, he hanged himself from an oak tree. At the age of 53, the father of 6 left behind a brief suicide note on a 50-pound note found in his wallet. Addressed to his youngest daughter, Marie, the note bequeathed whatever his belongings, like whatever he had to his name, he left everything to her. John's death had a profound impact on Linda and Charlotte, who were out on bail at the time. The loss drove them to escalate their substance abuse and turn to heavy drinking and hard drugs, including heroin, which it's not their first rodeo with that.
Yeah.
Following his death, the council repossessed his home, and Linda was forced to move out with her 4 children, because remember, they were all living with John Mulhall.
Wait, weren't they in jail at that point? Or no?
No, this is when they were arrested. Remember I said, I said you may be wondering why John wasn't arrested?
Yes.
So this was before. So I backtracked a little bit just to tell you why John wasn't arrested.
Okay.
And then following his death, the government basically took his house, and Linda and her 4 children were forced to move out, relocate, and go into government housing.
That's so sad.
So it's rough. It's rough for the kids. But amidst these tumultuous personal upheavals, the wheels of justice continued to turn. And on October 10th, 2006, one of the most gripping and eagerly anticipated criminal trials in recent Irish history commenced at the Dublin Central Criminal Court, lasting a total of 9 days, which for me does not sound like a lot. But I guess they didn't need a lot, right? Like they had...
It was kind of a...
Yeah.
Wait, dead to rights.
Dead to rights.
One of my favorite phrases.
Sometimes I say bang to rights.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, I think it means dead to rights.
What is it?
Bang to rights?
Bang to rights?
Yeah.
Never heard that
Okay,
before.
dead to rights works.
Probably a BritBox thing.
Probably. You're right. So the trial, lasting a total of 9 days, commenced, and the Scissor Sisters both pleaded not guilty, which is interesting.
Do we even know why they're called the Scissor Sisters yet?
Yeah, but you got to hang tight a little bit longer.
Okay, no, I meant yet because I remember not knowing, but it's coming up.
Yeah, no, and at this point in the trial, I don't think that the media actually dubbed them as the Scissor Sisters quite yet. I think it happened at the end of the trial. Okay. So again, this was set to be among the most gruesome and riveting cases ever presented in an Irish courtroom. And indeed, it was. In fact, the judge who presided over this case, Judge Paul Carney, described Farah's death as the most grotesque murder he had ever seen in his professional service. Now, in any murder trial, the prosecution establishes the context by detailing the location of the murder, the method of killing, and the identity of the victim, and concludes with the evidence against the accused.
I thought you were going to say method and manner.
I know. But who would that be? Not the prosecution. That would be the...
Forensic person.
The medical examiner.
Medical examiner.
So in the case of the Mulhall sisters, the primary evidence presented by the prosecutor, senior counsel George Birmingham, included Charlotte and Linda's own admissions of guilt, as well as substantial forensic proof that Farah Swaleh Noor was murdered at Flat 1, Richmond Cottages, which was his apartment with Kathleen, and the last place in which he was seen alive.
Yeah, and they pled not guilty?
Yes, they did.
Did we find out why? Or
We find out a little bit about let's keep going.
Okay.
The prosecution pointed out that the post-mortem showed that Farah had been stabbed 22 times with extensive internal injuries to, quote-unquote, pretty well all of his internal organs. You like that? His soft tissue had been cut through with a knife. Remember, they also used a kitchen knife.
Yeah.
It was like a bread knife.
And they were on him for a while.
4 hours for the dismemberment component. And the bones were determined to have been severed by being repeatedly chipped away at, which we knew. They took the hammer and they were like...
Oh, my God.
And of course, the head and the penis were never recovered. Evidence presented by the prosecution also included testimonies from the sisters admitting their roles in the crime to law enforcement during their interrogations.
Yeah.
Additionally, Muhammad Ali Abu Bakr testified about seeing Farah with the Mulhalls on the night of his death, noting that Farah appeared drunk and wore his Ireland away soccer jersey, a detail, of course, we know linked to the body found in the canal. Forensic scientist Dr. Breege McBride testified about the discovery of bloodstains at the apartment being consistent with a serious assault having taken place at a low-down location in the bedroom. And that's exactly what happened. They slit his throat, he dropped, he hit his head on the bunk bed, and they proceeded to kill him. There was also evidence of bloodstains in the grooves of the pine planks on the closet, but not on the surface of the wood, which is consistent with the cleanup having taken place to remove the blood. And the fact that CCTV footage captured the Mulhalls purchasing cleaning supplies 3 days after the murder provided yet another compelling piece of evidence.
3 days?
Yeah, they were cleaning for days, especially Kathleen. That was her way. I don't want to say of coping, but for lack of a better way of putting it, that was her way of coping. Charlotte was hardened. Charlotte was like business as usual. She stayed in that apartment. She was unmoved.
Yeah.
At least on the exterior. Mm-hmm. Linda was having a nervous breakdown every single day.
Yeah.
Kathleen cleaned.
Yeah.
And that's how they got through it. Claire Timms, who's another scientist, also confirmed at the trial the presence of ecstasy in Farah's blood at a level of 0.14 micrograms per milliliter, supporting the assertion that Kathleen had spiked his drink. Various members of law enforcement testified as well, as did Marie Mulhall, the youngest Mulhall daughter, who indicated that Charlotte confessed to her and Linda's involvement with the murder.
They were just fucking telling everyone. They're like O-Dog out there.
This is it, right?
Stop showing motherfuckers the tape, man.
It's exactly like that.
You have any idea what I'm talking about?
No, but like I've learned to go with it because it's usually
Menace to Society,
a movie or
great
a rap lyric.
O-Dog. They robbed a store and then they shot the clerk because he said something smart to O-Dog, and then he got.
I shot the clerk.
I shot the clerk.
I shot the clerk.
My cousin Vinny.
Yes.
Yeah.
He got it.
Nice.
Oh, sorry.
And they counted that as a confession. That's right. No, but in Menace to Society, he's just showing everybody the tape. He's so hyped up.
All willy-nilly like.
Yeah.
Yep. Charlotte's defense attorney. So everything I just told you was what the prosecution presented at trial. All of this evidence abound against them. Now, Charlotte's defense attorney, Isabel Kennedy, who was a well-known senior counsel in Ireland, disputed the issue of intent and suggested that Farah's death occurred in a moment of heightened tension and panic.
That's why they pled not guilty.
Yes, and the strategy here was to try to reduce the severity of the charge and or the potential sentence that would eventually be handed down to her client. Because in legal terms, disputing intent focuses on arguing that the accused did not have a premeditated desire or plan to commit murder, which is a critical element in distinguishing, between different degrees of homicide, such as murder or manslaughter.
And if you try for someone for murder and they're found not guilty, you can't go back and try and get them for manslaughter.
I believe you can knock down the charge.
In court?
I believe so. The jury found you not guilty of murder, but they found you guilty of manslaughter.
Okay.
Because in legal terms, disputing intent focuses on arguing that the accused did not have a premeditated desire or plan to commit murder, which is a critical element in distinguishing between different degrees of homicide, such as murder and manslaughter. To that end, according to D.I. Christy Mangan, who I keep bringing up, by the way, you probably know his name. I read his book for this research. Excellent. And he's like a total G. Had Linda and Charlotte walked up to the Fitzgibbon Street Garda station, which was just a mere few-minute walk from the murder scene, and reported that Farah had attacked them and that they killed him to protect themselves, they would have likely both received lesser charges.
Yeah.
It was the dismemberment that resulted in the media frenzy and murder conviction for Charlotte, which we're going to get to, and the hefty manslaughter sentence for Linda, which we're going to get to, because it implied premeditation versus self-defense or a snap. Okay?
Yes.
Linda's defense counsel, led by Brendan Grehan, SC, argued that she was coerced or acted under duress and that she was influenced by her sister and the circumstances they found themselves in.
Oh, they turned against each other?
A little bit. It's not that they turned against each other, but they actually, we're going to find out right now, were convicted of different charges.
Okay.
Because of that argument of intent.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, though, neither Linda nor Charlotte testified during the actual trial, though they were physically present in court for the entirety and read books, newspapers, and celebrity magazines during breaks.
Oh, during breaks.
Well, they said during breaks in evidence. So basically, during the trial, my understanding is when it wasn't straight up evidence being presented, you can see pictures, not in the courtroom, but outside of them with celebrity magazines.
It's like someone looking at their phone.
Maybe, yeah, you're right. I don't know if that's a great thing to do at your trial, but...
No, it's not, but...
Yeah, meanwhile, they wound up becoming the tabloid headline for quite some time.
Are they reading about themselves, maybe?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
Now, typically, it's not recommended that a defendant testify at his or her own criminal trial if all they're going to say is, I'm innocent, because the presumption of innocence suffices without the risks associated with testifying.
Yep.
But if there's more to the story, such as claims of self-defense, a mistake, an alibi to explain, or a plea for leniency, then the situation changes and the accused may want to testify. It's risky, but it's more of an option in that type of scenario.
Yep.
Now, that being said, the way a defendant presents on the stand has to be considered, and it's crucial. And given the circumstances, Charlotte and Linda likely would not have made a favorable impression upon the jury, so choosing not to testify was probably the right move, although in the end, I'm not sure it would have mattered one way or the other, given the end result. Okay. After 9 days of trial, jury deliberations began on Wednesday, October 25th, 2006. And in a highly unusual act, Judge Paul Carney made a random announcement to say that he was going to invoke what he called, and this is in quotes, one of the most awesome of his powers. Pop quiz. What awesome power did he invoke?
Invisibility. That's why he had a cloak, right? Invisibility cloak.
That's so funny. No. A.
Wow, that hurt, actually.
Listen, I get serious.
Yeah.
He provided wine to the jury with their evening meal.
That's one of his awesome powers?
I don't know. You're going to tell me. B. He intercepted the jury's verdict before it was delivered to make his own ruling in an act known as extra verdictum.
That's one of his Austin powers?
Okay.
Sorry, I'm done.
C, he arrested every single member of the media present in the courtroom, declared a mistrial, and claimed that there was a leak that poisoned the jury.
B.
No. I made that up. I even Googled how to say outside the verdict in Latin to make it sound more legit.
How does it go in Latin?
Extra verdictum.
Extra verdictum, okay.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Arrested
It's not real.
Arrested all the media people.
No.
I don't even remember what the other one was.
He provided wine to the jury.
Wine. How is that a power that he has?
Because there were concerns. This was like a very big deal at the time.
Yeah.
There were concerns that the jury consuming alcohol could have provided grounds for Charlotte and Linda to appeal any subsequent, I can never say that word, subsequent verdict.
Okay.
This was, again, a very big deal because people could say that whatever decision came up was under the influence of alcohol.
So how is that an awesome power?
Because he's saying he can do it anyway. He's saying, you may not like it. Prosecutors who definitely came back and said, we don't like this.
Yeah.
You may not like it, but I can do it.
Is that a law?
Apparently it's he said he was invoking an awesome power, not an Austin power.
A judge can give the jury wine? Is in a legal book somewhere?
I think that they're not supposed to drink is in a legal book. And he's saying, I'm overriding that. It's an awesome power.
Okay.
It was a big thing at the time, and I thought it was a cute pop quiz.
It was a cute pop quiz.
Okay. I know. You get hung up on things. I know. It's okay.
It's good.
Then the next day, on Thursday, October 26th at 12:30 p.m., Judge Carney unexpectedly informed the jury that a unanimous verdict was no longer necessary and allowed them to return a majority verdict instead. However, in spite of this move, which was to seemingly fast-track the verdict, the jury forewomen reported that they were still at an impasse, as they had a majority, but were far from reaching an 11-1 or a 10-2 decision.
Is that what it needs to be?
That's what it needs to be.
Even if it's not unanimous?
Right.
Okay.
Now, it was a tough trial, right? The victim was a sexual predator, and the perpetrators who committed a vile act were still victims of all kinds of abuse throughout their entire lives.
Yeah.
So in yet another unusual move to what's considered a relatively normal standard deadlock, right? Juries come back all the time in a hopeless deadlock, right? You've heard that phrase?
Hung jury.
Judge Carney stated, and I quote, 5 children have an interest in this, so I'm anxious that we reach a conclusion. If you have any doubt, resolve it in the favor of the accused.
Listen.
What?
I'm not that far away from him.
What? You're pushing the process, the wheel. No.
Well, hold on. Let me explain myself.
Okay.
So when somebody's on trial for killing somebody, the main goal is to keep them off the street so that they don't kill again. Mm-hmm. I don't see them killing again.
It doesn't, all due respect, I hear you on that, by the way, because I don't
Thanks for throwing in that all due respect after you rolled your eyes out of your head.
Head over to YouTube if you want to see that epic eye roll.
All due respect, you idiot. But
No, you're not an idiot at all. I'm always in line with what you're thinking. I respectfully disagree here.
I'm not saying I would do that. I'm just saying I get it.
No.
I understand.
I don't. I mean, I respect, even if I'm giving off other vibes, your opinion, I don't respect it at all. But this directive appeared to force the jury's hand. You can't do that.
Let me back up.
Okay.
I'm not okay with him doing that.
Oh.
I understand why because as you were saying that, like 2 minutes before that, I was thinking like, I wonder if they'd be a danger to society. Like that's the main question that needs to be answered. And I just don't feel like they would, unless their mother was being raped, assaulted by a guy who had continuously raped and beaten her. I mean, if they find themselves in that situation again, like what the fuck? But I don't see them like as a danger.
Right, but the fact that the judge made that call?
That's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. I was ready to hang it up.
We got our wires crossed.
So this directive, as I said, appeared to force the jury's hand. Senior counsel George Birmingham challenged this action in court, understandably, and accused Judge Carney of tipping the scales of the trial.
Of course.
Yet, all the judge responded with was, "Let's get real, Mr. Birmingham."
Let's get real, Mr. Bergendersh.
Let's get real, Mr. Birmingham. I'm going to try it again.
We know what you meant.
Can I just try it one more time? I have
Sure.
to. It's like a thing. I won't sleep at night.
Okay.
Let's get real, Mr. Birmingham.
Nice.
Thank you.
Very good.
And the process proceeded accordingly.
Let's get real. What does that mean?
He's like, let's get real. Like we all want this trial to just move and be done. We all know what's going to happen. Let's just push them.
It's like, dude,
fucking ridiculous in my opinion.
I think you're speaking for everyone at a turn.
Everyone
knows it. Ask anybody.
There's a reason there's a jury.
Yes.
And there's a reason there's a process. Eventually, on Saturday, October 28th at 2:30 p.m., after 18 hours and 1 minute of deliberations, the jury settled upon and delivered their verdict. Guilty. Mm-hmm. Linda immediately began to cry and said out loud, "Thank God it's over."
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying to you earlier when you said that sort of relief. Yeah. Even though you know you're going to be locked up and now you're going to be punished, it's still a sense of freedom.
And she also probably feels like she wouldn't be able to live without being punished in some way.
She was punishing herself. I truly don't think she would have been able to go on.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not saying like as a jury member, I would have fought for them to be released. I just like this case in particular is a little bit different than most of the cases we do.
Absolutely. And we will come back to that.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not going to say we're going to circle back because, like, I feel like you took the fun out of that one a little bit.
Was it fun?
For me, we're going to circle back. And you're like,
weird idea. Fun. I love saying circle back on the weekends.
Then I take what I can get doing these cases. They're heavy. Okay. Interestingly, due to the specific roles they played in the crime and the nature of their actions, Charlotte Mulhall was found guilty of murder and received a mandatory life sentence, while Linda Mulhall was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 15 years in prison.
Interesting.
This basically meant that Charlotte was found to have had the intention to kill, while Linda's involvement, although significant and punishable, was deemed not to have the same level of premeditation or intent to kill as Charlotte.
Yeah, I don't think Charlotte had intent. I mean, was premeditated either. It strikes me as an in the moment type of a snapping thing
For both of them.
Yeah.
Right. Still, Linda's sentence of 15 years was the second highest sentence ever for manslaughter in the history of Ireland at the time.
Yeah, the dismemberment is what makes it.
Absolutely, but a very hefty sentence, according to like how they typically sentence. Kathleen, by the way, which I touched upon earlier, had fucked off to London and
Kathleen?
Yeah, and abandoned her daughters. She hadn't been seen or heard from since September 2005, having completely abandoned the girls right after they were released after their first arrest.
She wasn't on trial too?
Not at this stage. Then, in a shocking move, she came back to Ireland on her own accord and turned herself in voluntarily At that point, it was February 2008. And she pleaded guilty to the lesser charges of concealing a crime and giving false information to the police.
Okay.
And she was sentenced to 5 years. After the conclusion of the trial, heard round the world, or at least all over Ireland.
Or at least all over Ballybow.
Well, I mean, I know about it all the way here.
Yeah.
How many years later?
And our Irish listeners certainly know about it.
Absolutely.
And we are coming for you guys.
Linda and Charlotte Mulhall were famously christened the Scissor Sisters by the media immediately after the guilty verdicts were announced. Pop quiz.
Oh, thank God.
The one you've been waiting for.
Thank God it's over. I'm going to find out why they're called the Scissor Sisters.
Why did the media dub the Scissor Sisters when scissors were not even used at any point in the crime? A, using alliteration in a title or headline is 75% more effective at selling newspapers.
Okay.
B, it's a reference to an American pop rock band called Scissor Sisters. C, an investigator intentionally misled a reporter about the murder weapon being a pair of scissors to filter out false confessions, and the details stuck.
A.
Alliteration? No.
I'm fucking blowing it.
It's okay.
C.
No. Made that up.
I don't remember what the other one. American Scissor Sisters rock band?
Yes.
Okay.
It's crazy. So it is a reference to the band Scissor Sisters, but it's being used in a darkly ironic way by the media because the band Scissor Sisters is known for their lively pop music and like flamboyant lifestyle or style, which contrasts sharply with the gruesome nature of the crime committed by the Mulhall sisters.
They'll say anything in a headline.
Also, yes. Also, there's like some sources that say, but I actually don't think this is the reason, that Linda and Charlotte, having cut up their victim, it was like a nod towards that. Like, let's just say scissors.
Yeah, I can see that.
I can see that, but it's not it. It's my understanding is that it's after the band.
Yeah, but
in
they
fact,
probably called them that after the band because of the implication.
Right. It's a double entendre.
Jay-Z.
So frontman Jake Shears of that band
Cheers.
joked.
Scissors.
Oh my God. You know you've made it in this business when they name killers after you. Do you, John?
Never heard
I mean,
of you.
Jake Shears.
Never heard of you, Scissor Sisters, until now.
Okay, let's delve into the patterns and behaviors associated with dismemberment.
Cool.
According to a September 2022 study in the Journal of Forensic Science, the relationship between offenders and victims plays a crucial role with respect to dismemberment.
Okay.
Male offenders often target strangers, and they're driven by sadism in 25% of the cases, while also exhibiting less methodical dismemberment patterns because it's often just in response to seeking pleasure. In contrast, female offenders typically victimize people they know, and they're more methodical. Women's motivations for dismemberment are usually defensive, aimed at eliminating evidence, and often linked to a history of intimate partner violence or a family conflict. And that absolutely checks out here with the Scissor Sisters. So after sentencing, Linda and Charlotte were immediately taken to Mountjoy Women's Prison, which is a medium security prison where they both continued to struggle with alcoholism on the inside, and Linda with her mental health issues and breakdowns.
The sisters did?
Yes.
Yeah.
One time in prison, after a model head she was using for hairdressing, Linda now, was taken by another inmate. Linda fell to her knees and began crying uncontrollably, saying that the lost head had brought back the image of Farah's lost decapitated head that she buried twice.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, PTSD. Meanwhile, Charlotte was actually 2 months pregnant while she had been awaiting trial, and by the time the trial concluded and she was incarcerated, she had already given birth. Her infant son, just 8 months old, initially joined her in prison so that she could care for him.
What?
However, when he turned 1, he was taken away from her. And this is a stark reality that underscores just how deep and lasting the impact of this case has had on the most innocent of all. Because to me, the truest victims of this highly disturbing case are all the children that were caught in the crosshairs.
Oh, yeah.
Linda's eldest son, who was just 13 years old at the time of her arrest, approached Detective Inspector Christy Mangan with a maturity beyond his years, shook the detective's hand, and asked that he take care of his mammy, which is so sad.
Yeah.
And the 17-year-old daughter of Farah Noor, who resided in Kenya and was born during Farah's earlier legitimate marriage back in Kenya, tragically collapsed and died shortly after learning that her father had been murdered in Ireland. She was unwell before this.
Okay,
but look what's happening to these children. The aftermath of Farah's brutal murder continued to haunt Linda long after her incarceration. So she was released from prison in 2018 after serving just 12 years of her 15. And just the accumulated pressures and past traumas absolutely overwhelmed her. This led Linda to attempt suicide by overdosing on drugs, which required urgent paramedic response and hospitalization. As she struggled with the haunting consequences of her past actions, the broader implications of the case continued to provoke deep reflection. Despite the passage of time, the question still lingers. What could have driven two women with no history of extreme violence to commit such a horrific act?
Yeah.
Here, the unique dynamics within the Mulhall family, for sure, played a significant role in what happened. The confirmed background of abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse, and dysfunction within the family totally provided a complex backdrop to this crime. A forensic psychologist named Dr. Ciara Stanton, who I mentioned in part one, claimed that the sisters decapitated Farah in order to remove torment, right? We mentioned this, as he'd been verbally abusive and made crude comments that started the chain of events that led to the murder.
Yeah.
And she asserted that they cut off his penis as a signal of power.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember what Linda said when she cut off his penis.
I don't.
Now you're never going to rape my ma again.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, and also, I don't think people realize how often alcohol and drugs play into people's situations who wind up in jail. Not just drunk driving arrests or drunk driving, accidents where someone dies or drug dealing, but like, I'd be interested to find out how many or what percentage of people in jail were under the influence when they committed the crime that landed them in jail.
Yeah, I also was interested by this, but just in terms of this specific case, because given the prolonged drug abuse and the significant amount of drugs and alcohol consumed at the time of the murder, I wondered if they could have presented a defense based on psychological impairment, like drug-induced psychosis. But the defense attorneys didn't argue drug-induced psychosis because, and I thought this was surprising, but apparently high doses or frequent use of ecstasy, while it can significantly disrupt neurotransmitter systems, it can lead to severe psychological effects like hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia, which are all symptoms of psychosis.
Yeah, it's a stimulant.
Exactly. Apparently, the brutal nature of the crime and the evident planning involved in the disposing of the body parts indicated a level of premeditation that made it challenging to argue that the act was solely due to drug-induced psychosis, so they never even raised it.
Yeah.
But, and you've said this before too, I believe, it's not even just the excessive drug use at the time, it's all the buildup.
The wear and tear
before that.
Oh, yeah.
And the implications that can have on your mental capacity.
Yeah. I'm not saying this would obviously be crazy, but like if someone woke up from a night of heavy drinking and was hungover and they were in a tremendous amount of pain, that you're in a different mindset then. Even though you're not under the influence of the drug at that time, you're under the influence of the consequences of the drug.
Yeah, interesting.
You just, when you use drugs like that all the time and drink all the time, you're never in your right mind.
I'm so surprised that they didn't try to argue some type of impairment on some level.
I think if you do that, then that means that their danger or lack thereof to society is contingent on whether or not they use drugs. And I don't know if you can make like sobriety a condition of somebody's release. I mean, once they serve time, you can. Yeah. And they're on parole, but the assumption that they're not going to use drugs, and if they don't use drugs, then they won't kill anybody, is a little gray.
No, that's a good argument.
Thank you.
Are they psychopaths?
These people?
Yeah. Linda and Charlotte, are they psychopaths?
Charlotte, I would say yes. Linda, no.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And I don't actually know about Charlotte, but the morning after the murder at 11 a.m., Linda, Charlotte, and Kathleen casually went out to breakfast with Farah's severed head in a bag, which suggests a level of cold and calculated behavior, possibly even mental dissociation.
Psychopathy.
Well,
I like that word. That's the only reason I said it.
Oh, okay. It is chilling to think that they could eat egg sandwiches in public with the head of the man who, by the way, Kathleen presumably loved just hours after killing him.
I know.
But this act alone does not conclusively define them as psychopaths, because psychopathy involves a broader range of behavior and traits, including persistent antisocial behavior, lack of empathy, and remorselessness. Linda certainly experienced tremendous remorse.
Yeah.
Charlotte, not so much, but I don't know that she lacked empathy or had antisocial behavior in her life, you know?
So all three have to be present?
Those are the classic symptoms, yeah. You can't just, like, not feel remorse and then be considered a psychopath. It's more than that.
Okay. Thank God.
So there can be little doubt that Farah Swaleh Noor was a nasty, violent, abusive man. And it's quite possible that he would have actually wound up killing Kathleen or someone else had he himself not been killed first.
Yeah.
But even though he was a piece of shit, the fact remains that no one has the right to kill and chop up another human being.
Nope.
And Farah Noor actually left behind a devastated family back in Kenya. His mother, Samoa Bakari Shigu, sent a fax to Detective Sergeant McDonnell on February 1st, 2006, saying the following. This is all in the letter, okay? Fate is very strong, and as human beings, we are to succumb to it. This is what befell my late dear son, who really cared for me as a mother and his family. I had really cherished the idea of availing myself in Ireland so as to pay my last respect to my beloved son who was brutally murdered. What haunts me and the entire family most is the fact that the remnants of my son's body are yet to be buried. In our holy scripture, we are told we are from God, and to him we shall return. On this note, and humbly, with tears of despondency streaming on my face, I hereby give the coroner my consent so that his body is laid to rest. On the same note, I would like to register my heartfelt appreciation to the Government of Ireland for its sincere and genuine concern for human rights, free from favor or discrimination. Thank you in advance.
Damn, where'd you go? The Slater School of Writing?
That was a pretty good letter, right?
Yeah, it was.
I know, I was so impressed by it. So on March 10th, the dismembered body of 39-year-old Farah Swaleh Noor was taken to Glasnevin Cemetery for burial. About 40 people gathered to take part in a traditional Muslim ceremony to remember him. A prayer service took place in Stanford's funeral home before he was buried in a plot paid for by the taxpayer. In conclusion, the infamous saga of the Scissor Sisters etched a stark, indelible mark on Ireland's criminal chronicles. Linda and Charlotte Mulhall committed...
Chronicles, that was nice.
Yeah, alliteration.
Christmas Chronicles, it reminded me of.
Yeah. Linda and Charlotte Mulhall committed ruthless, savage, barbaric acts when they murdered and dismembered Farah Noor. Although they faced harsh circumstances in life, it in no way excuses these heinous acts.
Yeah, no.
However, understanding their background is crucial when attempting to answer the elusive questions of why and how such a disaster could occur. And I love something that D.I. Christie Mangan said in his book, which the book, by the way, is called Cracking the Case Inside the Mind of a Top Garda. And this is what he said, quote, "In order to build a rapport with a person who has murdered another human being, it is important to gain an understanding of their life experiences. In one of our numerous conversations, Linda told me that she'd been subjected to indescribable violence by a former partner. She just wanted to be treated well. When, after her conviction, I asked her why she admitted to the murder, she simply replied, 'You treated me well.' Because ultimately, at the beginning, the end, and every stage in between, perpetrators are, after all, simply human.
Yeah.
And it is in everyone's best interest to understand what drives them to step over that line so we can better prevent such actions from happening again and foster a safer, more compassionate society where everyone benefits."
Amen, sister.
And that's the case of the Scissor Sisters. By the way,
Yeah.
Charlotte's allowed unsupervised day visits now, as of 2022.
Okay.
Did you know that in Ireland, a life sentence means that a person can only apply to the parole board after 12 years? Doesn't actually mean that they're like required to be imprisoned for life.
Oh, that reminds me of that lifetime guarantee bullshit.
It's guaranteed for the lifetime of the product.
Oh, caveat.
Did you know that?
No, I
Oh,
didn't.
it's so stupid. It's such a bullshit selling point. There's a lifetime guarantee. Like we used to give Sorry, Joe. A lifetime guarantee on the fence?
Yeah.
From the manufacturer, but the lifetime guarantee was like 20 years. That's the lifetime of the fence.
Got it. So that was the case, man.
Very good.
Interesting.
Very well done.
Thank you.
The storytelling was top tier.
Shit.
Premium.
Thank you. Couldn't have done it without you, with your top tier commentary. What? What's the face?
Definitely could have done it without me.
No, I wouldn't want to do it without you.
Exactly.
I wouldn't want to.
Exactly. It would be so fucking boring.
I know. It might as well be an audiobook at that point. You know what I'm saying?
Just kidding, Slater. Just kidding.
Oh, here I am, like, supporting you. Okay.
No, it would. I was just kidding about saying it would be so fucking boring.
I know.
Yeah. Please. I know my place in this. I know my role in this podcast.
Yeah, it's important. Don't go anywhere.
I'm the cackling, dim-witted asshole of the podcast.
You remember that line?
Just came to me right now.
Amazing.
All right. Wow. Well, that was some case. And to our Irish listeners, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope everyone enjoyed it. But
absolutely, this was for everyone. But a definite wink at our Irish people.
Yeah, my DNA is screaming to be accepted by Irish people.
Okay, I think you are.
I hope so. But I remember being in Montauk when I was very young, and I was drunk at the time, so I was probably saying a lot of dumb stuff. But there used to be a lot of Irish girls who would work in Montauk, like over the summer. It was some kind of like program they had set up.
Yeah.
Do you know about it?
I do.
Oh, okay. And I was out at a bar one night drinking when I was drinking, and I was like, I'm Irish. And they're like, you're not fucking Irish.
You're not Irish enough.
Yeah. Like, I'm not Irish. I'm American.
Right. But you're of Irish lineage.
Exactly.
So that's fine.
Well, I'm
0.01% Polynesian, and I will stand by that.
Moana.
That's right.
Araza.
Moana Slater. Thank you very much.
Well, it is time for a Tank's Tidbit.
Oh, yeah.
And it works really well with this case. I don't know what made me write this to myself. It was in the context of some kind of desperate attempt to understand life and stop feeling pain. I just wrote, we as a species are imperfect. Like, I'm not especially imperfect compared to anyone else. And neither really is anybody else. Some people, if there's a spectrum of imperfection, which there is obviously because perfection is unattainable and no redeeming qualities is like, just doesn't exist. It never has. Even Ted Bundy was someone's son at one point. You know what I mean? Just the scale on which I judge myself has loosened up immensely because I don't hold myself to standards that are not achievable anymore when I used to, big time. And, character defects are something that's talked about in recovery. And, one of the steps is became, ready to have these defects of character removed. And it took me such a long time to realize that I used to think that character defects were the things that I beat myself up about. But I found out that beating myself up was like my biggest character defect.
Oh, wow.
So that was a huge turning point as well. So if you're beating yourself up, I don't mean to be as simple as saying try not doing that, but like try not doing that.
How do you get better if you don't call yourself out?
Get better at what?
Whatever it is you're shitting on yourself about.
Shitting on yourself has never been productive. And I want to get better at loving myself, so shitting on myself is contradictory to that.
That might have been too intense the way I said it.
Well,
but
listen, if you want to get better at baseball, you can't just let yourself suck at baseball.
Right.
I'm talking about being the human experience. Mm-hmm. You make mistakes, and the more I grill myself over the mistakes I make, the more likely I am to make mistakes in the future because my brain wants to create that that feeling that I'm familiar with, which is bad.
Yeah.
And my subconscious goes, you've been doing good for a while. I think you should, yell at your son so you feel bad.
I don't get it.
You don't get it?
Sorry.
What do you mean?
That part I didn't get.
So I've said this before.
Oh, you're doing too well. I'm going to make you feel like shit right now.
The subconscious.
Right, got it. I'm sorry.
Which is the real driver in the brain is saying you're doing too well.
Like self-sabotage.
Oh, yeah. Self-loathing. Self-loathing, when self-centeredness and trauma intersect, self-loathing is born out of that.
Right,
or
you said that.
imprints on the person in that moment. So to the level that self-loathing imprints, that determines how, I don't want to say bad, but how contradictory your actions are going to be to what you say you want versus what you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So The main tidbit is take it easy on yourself. Be kind to yourself.
I like that.
Just for this moment.
Have
even.
grace for yourself.
Just for the next 30 seconds if you can't do it for a whole day.
Yeah. You know when I give myself grace, which took me a while. So I had a very tough time in college. And I always kick myself because I'm like, those were supposed to be your best years. You know what I mean? And I feel regret. And I couldn't go to homecoming. I know it sounds silly for years. I never actually have been to a homecoming.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go back because I don't want to be reminded of how badly I fucked it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The last time we went back to the University of Maryland, when we were like looking at the criminal justice buildings and stuff like that, I had some kind of experience, some kind of healing moment, finally at 41 years old, where I was like, can you please forgive the 20-year-old girl who was having a hard time and did the best she could with the tools she had at the time. Can you just forgive her and move on?
Yeah.
And it was so healing. And Dave was there for it too. And he could witness this. He's like, I 20 years in the making, Brooke, 20 years in the making. Because he was always trying to tell me all these years, you were going through something and that's okay. And I'm like, but I squandered my college years, you know what I mean? But it weighed heavily. I didn't really retain any college friends. I shut that book and threw it against the wall.
See, the danger of doing that is squandering the only thing you can possibly squander, which is the present moment.
Exactly.
And if you're doing that about something that happened 20 years ago, obviously that's not going to, we tend to, that's why I said Linda probably felt relieved when she got the punishment she deserved.
She did. She said, thank God it's over.
I know, but that's sad also. Well, not that she said, thank God it's over, but it's like, she knew what she did. She did wrong. Kind of like when my son does something wrong and he's like, what are you going to take my iPad away? And he's not being bratty. He's scared that that's what I'm going to do. So he just says it.
He confronts it.
And he used to, when he was younger, I don't know if I ever even told you this. When he did something wrong, he'd be like, you're gonna throw me in the woods and rub me in the poison ivy, aren't you? I'm like, what, dude?
That was the worst thing he could think of.
What are you talking about? No, absolutely not. But I, the fact that he thought he deserved that is something that made me like, all right, dude, take it easy on him in general.
Yeah.
It's just a kid. Forgive you forgiving yourself. Forgive the 7-year-old boy who didn't brush his teeth the first time you asked.
And got his dad mad.
Relax.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I let myself get mad.
Yeah. I like it.
All right. So with that said, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for watching, if you're watching.
Yep. And sticking it out through a 2-parter, no less.
Yeah. And I apologize on behalf of us for the break that you had to wait over with the 2-parter. So I feel your pain, and I'm with you in this journey. All right, so we'll see you guys at the next episode.
Thanks for listening. Bye.